Well, Andrea, investigators are trying to figure out how and why a switch along the railroad diverted the train off course. Tonight, survivors riding an Amtrak train 91 speaking for the first time about the deadly crash.
All of a sudden, pow! And everybody just come out of their seats. It took seats that was bolted down and ripped them slap out the floor.
The train left from New York headed to Miami. Around 2:30 this morning, the Amtrak slammed into a CSX freight train outside Columbia, South Carolina. More than 130 people on board. Everett Lennon had just gotten on the train in Columbia, headed home to Orlando.
After it slung us this way and slung us back that way, I looked at my partner there on them crutches, and I said, what the hell?
More than 100 passengers injured. Among those killed, 2 Amtrak workers, the train's engineer and conductor.
It appears that Amtrak was on the wrong track.
South Carolina's governor says the Amtrak train was on the wrong track when it slammed into the CSX train, parked on the side track. The speed limit in the area, 60 miles per hour.
I mean, 2 trains, that's about as forceful as you can get. The engine of the first engine of the freight train, of course, was torn up, and the single engine of the passenger train, the Amtrak train, which was headed south, was barely recognizable.
President Trump tweeting his thoughts and prayers for the victims. The survivors taken to nearby hospitals for treatment. At least 3 of the crash survivors treated and released were children. Red Cross assisting those survivors with food and shelter until buses arrived to take them to their final destination. Meanwhile, the NTSB investigators are on scene. The focus is on why a rail switch was locked to divert the Amtrak train away from the main track.
Key to this investigation is learning why that switch was lined that way.
And here's the latest from the NTSB. They will be looking at both train operations, reviewing cameras and employee training. They will also be performing drug and alcohol tests on those Amtrak crew members, which is standard procedure in these crashes. They will also be reviewing cell phone records. A handful of survivors still remain in the hospital tonight. Their condition ranges from critical to serious injuries. Now, Dewan and Andrea, some of them are suffering from head and other physical injuries. That is the very latest. We are live here in Casey. Tim Pulliam, ABC 11 Eyewitness News.
Behold the future.
The world remembers America's pastor, Billy Graham. Thousands gathered under this tent to pay tribute. This memorial, part of Graham's final burial wishes in honor of the tent revivals that catapulted him onto the world stage nearly 70 years ago.
Master and Savior.
Today, personal reflections from international Christian leaders and his 5 children.
He wrapped his arms around me and he said, welcome home.
He was faithful, he was available, and he was teachable.
I will live my life to exalt and glorify the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. So I love you, Daddy.
Graham's oldest son, Franklin, gave the eulogy, closing with this message.
My father preached on heaven. He wrote a book on heaven. And today, he's in heaven. His journey is complete.
Among close family and friends in the audience, celebrities, clergy, Vice President Mike Pence, and President Donald Trump, the only president who attended Friday's service. After a week of motorcades, processionals, and public tributes, today a humble and private memorial for the 99-year-old Protestant preacher. The son of a North Carolina dairy farmer whose faith built an empire ministering to the poor and powerful, today taking his final crusade. Graham's grandsons carried his casket to his final resting place. He will be buried in the library gardens next to his wife, Ruth. His tombstone will read, Preacher of the Gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ. Tim Pulliam, ABC News, Charlotte, North Carolina.
The civil rights movement took a tragic turn when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed. And on that day, 50 years ago, he was actually supposed to be in North Carolina. Following the passing of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, there was a big push in eastern North Carolina to infuse the 1968 election with black candidates. 33-year-old NC Central alum Eva Clayton was one of them, running for North Carolina's then congressional 2nd District. Clayton and others invited Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to Durham and Wilson.
He committed himself to come to help increase voter registration, and we were excited about that.
I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
But Dr. King was leading a campaign to improve labor conditions for sanitation workers in Memphis. A violent resistance erupted, forcing him to extend his visit and cancel his trip to North Carolina. Clayton understood the reason, but was disappointed.
We had a big thing going, right? And all of a sudden, oh my goodness, you couldn't believe it. But after that, you recognize that he made that decision wholeheartedly.
On April 4th, 1968, Dr. King was assassinated by James Earl Ray in Memphis on the balcony of his hotel. The nation mourned in violence. And peaceful marches, some of them led by young people here in the Triangle. And at Duke University, students held silent vigils. Then sophomore Wib Gully was among the hundreds pictured here by Duke Chapel, protesting King's assassination and other issues brewing on campus, including the treatment of the university's minimum wage staff.
That evening and a lot of the next day, there was just sort of a sense of what in the world do we do?
The vigils lasted days. Action, Gully says, began to improve Duke's approach to its employees and workforce culture.
I think for many of us was a life-changing event.
A life committed to helping others. Gully retired from public service as Durham's former mayor and state senator, and retired managing editor for the Durham Herald, Bob Ashley, who as a Duke student wrote about the silent vigils for the campus paper. What was it like to cover this movement?
It was pretty remarkable.
Do you think him being here instead of in Memphis would have changed history?
I can't say. I'm a believer somewhat in that God has his own way. And I'm not saying he was destined to die. I believe that he saw a greater need.
The people in this story were young when they were inspired by Dr. King. Today, youth activism has emerged. Wednesday, the nation will honor Dr. King's legacy, and I will be here to cover it for you. In Memphis, Tim Pulliam, ABC 11 Eyewitness News. 50 years after Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination, today's ceremony was about reflecting on his life. 39 rings. For the number of years Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. lived. It's here outside room 306 at the Lorraine Hotel where the civil rights icon was gunned down. That moment still feels raw for Reverend Jesse Jackson 5 decades later, who was with Dr. King when he was shot, calling his assassination a crucifixion. Jackson and others who spoke challenged the audience to uphold his vision.
Stop the violence, save the children, keep hope alive.
Equality for all.
Nothing would be more tragic than for us to be turned back now.
Earlier in the day, in the spirit of Dr. King, people called attention to human rights outside the labor union office for Memphis sanitation workers.
America's moment to come to Jesus, come on.
And then a march, similar to the 1968 protest Dr. King led for 1,300 striking workers. We found Triangle resident Al McShirley, who recalled working alongside Dr. King for civil rights in the 60s.
Well, yes, he had dreams. Yes, he was able to communicate them, but really, he was a revolutionary.
A man whose influence impacted many who traveled to Memphis from the Triangle, like St. Augustine University President Everett Ward, who was 9 in 1968.
I understood at an early age that I had to then dedicate my life to service.
To Durham pastor Benji Kelly of New Hope Church.
They might have killed the dreamer, but the dream lives on. And we've come so far, but we still have a long ways to go with race relations in America.
A charge on this anniversary to move King's legacy forward.
Where I read of the freedom of assembly.
In Memphis, Tim Pulliam, ABC 11 Eyewitness News. This is an incredible story. It is here on this football field where Tice Oldenburg suffered that traumatic brain injury. That was 2 months ago. Tonight, for the first time, we are seeing his progress. After suffering a traumatic head injury,
Tice Oldenburg wants you to know he's pushing through his recovery. 50 push-ups a day, a challenge he hopes to achieve by year end.
Hey, I got it.
This is a stark contrast from 2 months ago. The Orange High School football player lying unconscious in a hospital bed from a drug-induced coma. Oldenburg suffered a brain injury during a game against Hillside High. After several brain surgeries and weeks of rehab, Tice returned home just before Christmas. Welcoming him inside were cards, letters, and posters from family, friends, and strangers wishing him well.
Is there a particular message that touches you?
Not really. They all inspire me to get better and heal up and work out, get stronger, even when I'm hurt.
His routine now consists of physical and speech therapy. The road to recovery at times difficult for the 15-year-old. His memory is not what it used to be, especially when it comes to what happened.
It's really frustrating.
Do you want to play football again?
Of course, next year. I'm playing next year, for sure, if she lets me. But I hope she will. I really do.
We're really staying in the present, and we're trying to focus on today.
But right now, Oldenburg's mom, Jan, is not thinking about football. Her new full-time job is making sure her son recovers. Part of that is keeping him encouraged, surrounding his space with signs of the community's love, support, and prayers.
All the Hillside players sent cards and signs, so it was so thoughtful that this was his uniform from that day. Tice, you're the coolest, funniest guy ever. Keep working hard. Love, Leslie, your favorite. She was his occupational therapist, and we're doing everything we can to get him better. He is getting better.
And that is certainly good news. Tice has a doctor's appointment later this week where doctors will check on his head. Family members believe that is when they will learn more about his condition. He is currently not in school at Orange High School. Right now, he is being homeschooled. We are live here in Orange County. Tim Pulliam, ABC 11. Eyewitness News. You know, Andrea, Amber, this tornado affected a small section of East Greensboro, but the impact is so big. Just take a look over my shoulder here. There is a home knocked off of its foundation. It has been condemned. We are here on Ardmore Street, and then if you just look at the row of cars that have been damaged by the debris from this tornado, you see all of these power lines in the road, and even this power line leading you here to this transformer. The utility pole split in half, and then over here you can see that there have been several utility companies here working to restore power to more than 6,000 people. Now, just a few blocks away from here, we visited an apartment complex, the Avalon Apartments. The tornado ripped off the roof of the apartment complex. We met Akeem New there. He showed us the damage to his family's home. There were broken windows, shattered glass, debris everywhere. He took us upstairs where you could see a tree inside his bedroom and a view of the sky. Tonight, Akeem, his girlfriend, and 5-year-old daughter are homeless.
I haven't had my broke down moment yet, but it's like when it hit me, it's gonna be like man, you know, you might have to start all over there. When they had time to even establish, you know, living here yet, you know, we were still getting things in order with buying piece by piece, but it's devastating.
Now, Akeem and his family had only been living in that apartment for about 5 months before all of this happened. So, of course, as he said, he is devastated. Now, coming up at 5 o'clock, the community is really coming together to rally around these storm survivors. They're trying to put smiles on their faces for some of these victims who are struggling right now. We'll have that story for you coming up at 5. But for now, live in Greensboro, Tim Pulliam, ABC 11 Eyewitness News.
What do you want to say to lawmakers today once you get to the General Assembly?
You know, I just want them to know that we work really hard. You know, I'm one of the last teachers out of the building on a regular basis. And we work really hard for the kids, and we're passionate, and that's why they're able to have enough teachers, because teachers are passionate.
New tonight at 6, get ready to bounce. A local Zumba instructor is combining her love of dance with her love of all things Bull City.
Since I'm from North Carolina and the movements to the beat seem easy, I gave it a try. Okay, this is tough. Mazik's goal, give Durhamites of all backgrounds something to be proud of in a fun positive way.
It's our dance. It's Durham's dance.